Hey, Pouring Nation, welcome back. Today, as you can see, I have the talented,
Anna Blount.
and today we are going to review some of the paintings that you have submitted to us. If you haven't seen the first video, I will link it down below where we looked at 10 different artists' art, and we're going to continue that in this video. All right, so here we have Awani Jane. I apologize if I said that name wrong, but we got 5 pictures, and we don't have enough time to do all of them, but we're going to give a little bit of feedback from them. So I'm just going to go through them really quickly. So we have a feather, what looks like a flip cup, another flip cup, a swipe,
That's a
maybe
Dutch
a
pour, I
straight
think. It
pour.
looks like
Oh
a
yeah,
hair dryer.
I can totally see that. Probably a hair dryer. And this one we think is a Fiona Art bottle bottom and then reverse. Um, what is that called? We just talked
Dip,
about it.
reverse
Reverse
dip.
dip, where you pull the handkerchief or towel off of the painting. So first with this one, I gotta admit, this one is tough. I haven't gotten a good feather pour yet. I think you are on the right track. It's just changing the colors that you use, maybe a little bit of the thickness of the colors, and then getting another color that can kind of pop out. And I think that's the way to go with doing this into the future. So the next we have this, which kind of looks like a either a straight pour or a flip cup with some movement in it.
Mm-hmm.
And could you, what was used for Awani's paintings? It
Uh,
was
so
glue.
yeah, she used a 40-60 water and glue mixture and Montmartre and Camlin paints.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the Cantlin, but
She
Montmartre I
said
have
it's an
definitely
Indian
used.
brand.
Oh, perfect.
And she
So I'm
said
not
in
sure
these
what you.
ones she also added some rubbing alcohol to that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I have used rubbing alcohol in the past with my pours, but there's some colors that it seriously thickens up instead of thins
Ah,
out, which is really strange. So I've
hmm.
stopped using it except for in some swiping that I've done. But it can definitely lead to some interesting things. But that's probably why she got a little bit of the cells. Although I'm assuming the glue that she used also was a cell creator, just because you see it in various places. So I think you had some feedback for this one.
Yeah, this one, she said she didn't use silicone oil. This to me has the look of a painting, a glue and water and paint painting that has silicone in it, because those giant cells will often form where there's like a drop of silicone. And then, in order to bring out more cells, you need to use a torch, because in a glue and water mixture, the heat from the torch will actually kind of activate the silicone and make the cells. Whereas if you're using a Floetrol mix, the silicone activates automatically. So I don't know if those cells in there are actually from silicone or not, but if they are from silicone and you're wondering why didn't I get more cells, try torching and it might bring up some more cells.
Yeah. One thing I like about this that really catches the eye is that purple. It's just subtle in different places here. And I really love the cell in the bottom left hand corner there that has the purple and blue and black. And so I think you got a great color combination. Maybe tweaking how you get on the canvas and when you torch, like Anna said, could give you some great results here. I think you got some great cells on the swipe here, or on the Dutch pour. We think it is here.
Mm-hmm.
Probably from the bottom left to the top right is how we blew that. I'm assuming just based on what's there. Um,
Yeah.
for me, I just add another color that kind of gives it some complement or catches the eye compared to it's kind of all one color, at least based on these pictures. And I know these pictures are a little more orange just based on how we saw them than so that probably in real life looks a little bit different. And last, the Fiona. I love these ones. I actually right here have one that I did, one of my favorite ones. And I will tell you, it took like, I don't know, 20 or 30 attempts to get that to work right. So don't feel bad. Um, it does take a lot of bit of work. And I had to use her exact mixture initially. I've branched out a little bit since I finally got that one to work, but it's hard to get the ingredients right to make that really sell up like you see on Fiona's.
Well, thanks, Awani, for sending your pictures. These two paintings were sent in by Nancy Lennon, and the feedback she was requesting was, are these any good? So we got two that they look like the same shape same style, and she said they're Deco Art paints. They're mixed 3 parts paint to 1 part water. And the way she did it, she said horizontal lines with a vertical comb stripe. So I'm assuming she laid out lines of paint, and then I can see certain areas where it looks like she took a comb and ran it vertically. And then what I would imagine based on the shapes that we have is that then she tilted it back and forth kind of all over the place to get it to stretch and go really funky. So I've never seen a painting like this. It's pretty cool, especially this one I really like because your colors have stayed nice and defined. If you go to that next one, the one that had more pink, this one it looks like maybe your paint was too watery because especially down at that bottom right section, but the whole bottom edge, but especially there, it looks like your paints have kind of split. I can't totally tell from the picture, but it looks like perhaps some flocculation,
Yeah.
which can happen if there's too much water in the paints and they just can't hold up to it. Also, the colors are blending a little bit more in this one, I think, perhaps because they're a little too thin. But
Yeah.
it's a cool technique.
Yeah, I really like how the colors, again, this is 100% an abstract. And for one of your first pours, it's a great result, I think. I also really like the comb
Mm-hmm.
that you did here, and that you can still see it defined even after doing the tilting off to the different edges. And I like the color combination. I think that's for me personally, I like the color combination better than this color combination. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and colors is hard because there are some colors that everybody likes, and there's some that other people. I can't tell you how many times I've had a pour, and I've said I really didn't like this, and I poured over it, and I've got a ton of comments that are like, "Why did you get rid of that beautiful painting?" You know, that's one of those personal choice things. But I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think you got a great result here, and I'm glad you started. And it's all about practice at this point. So next we have two pictures from Paula O'Neill. One is before, one is wet, and one is dry. And um, it look. She says she did on a white base. She did two straight pours, what we think are two straight pours, one here, and the paints that she used, Liquitex, um, Creative Inspirations, and what was the third one?
Amsterdam.
And Amsterdam, and then more of a Molly's Artistry with a little GAC 800, a little Creative Inspirations, Gloss Medium, and Floetrol as the mix. And Paula doesn't think that this picture has any oomph or any something that really sticks out, and she's wondering what she could do, maybe embellish what she could have done while it was wet, maybe to get a better result. And my initial um, response to that is I love this painting. So let's just look at them both. We think this is the wet one and this is the dry one, just because with acrylic paints the colors usually mute a little bit as it dries. I actually really love how this turned out. I love the colors. I love the two pours that you did and that you have that all up here. I love the little not swipes, but lacing that you got down here. If it were my painting, I wouldn't do any embellishment on this. And I know that's a personal preference there, but I think you got a great result. And a coat of varnish will actually bring the colors out a little more, make them look a little more bright like they were when it was wet. Um, what do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I looked at this for a while and I can't figure out what I would add to this. And she was saying she isn't super comfortable with like brush painting something over the top of it, so she was wondering what can I do while this is wet. And my advice would be if you try to do something while this is wet, you're going to mess up what you already have, which is all those beautiful layers and cells and lacing and stuff. So if this was me and I wanted to add something, I would let it dry first, and then I'd maybe add a stencil. I don't know if you've seen Olga Sobi's stencil videos. I also have some videos showing how to do a stencil where you use gloss gel and it's like a nice textured stencil. So if you wanted to add something, that could be really cool without needing like brush painting abilities. I'm looking at it now. If you wanted to add like a tiny little surfer up on that light colored wave. Maybe over on the left side, just a little little surfer
Hmm.
riding the wave. Um, that to me might be a good thing to stick in there. You might be able to find a temporary tattoo of that. I've never put a temporary tattoo on a pour, but I know a lot of people do. Or you can just find a picture and just carefully copy it out line for line. Embellishments don't have to be hard. I'm really not a great brush painter. Um, so be bold, try something out. But I think this looks great as it is, and it doesn't really need embellishment.
I agree. You did really well here, Paula.
So these next two paintings were submitted by Fiona Hill. So this one she used the Massey leaky cup to make her design. So this one she used the leaky cup and she spun it out. And there was another one where it was a leaky cup and then she tilted it. So there's the tilting one. And she's asking, how do I get base paint coverage but still keep the negative space? If you could go to that, yeah, that one. You see down on the bottom edge of that canvas, you can see dark showing through. So to me, this looks like it was a reused canvas. So I don't know if this was a dry canvas that she's pouring on top of, or whether it was like she poured and then she scraped it, and so the canvas is still kind of wet with that darker paint. Anytime you have a light, especially white, but any really light colored background, if you're pouring that over a canvas that already has a design on it, you might see that design through the light colored paint. So it's important to add a good layer of white paint or primer before you do your pour on top of it. In terms of the paint consistency, I can't tell that it's too thin or too thick, but it does look like maybe your paint layer is a bit uneven. So it might be better to just make sure you have a really good, even layer of paint before you start doing your spinning.
Yeah, I think it is probably a little bit too thick just based on how it kind of bubbles up on the ends. Normally, thinner paint doesn't, it moves, but it doesn't bubble up on the end. Um,
Interesting.
and And also, just because you see all the, I can see that you took a spatula or a palette knife or something to kind of smooth out the background, but you still have ridges, which means it probably is on the thicker side. Um, and when I say thicker, I don't mean, gobs thicker. It's just a little bit thicker than probably would be best for this type of pour.
A thicker paint, if you're trying to keep nice crisp edges, thicker paint is not a bad thing. You just have to make sure that you don't have areas where there's too much paint and too little paint. I
Hmm.
think unevenness in your paint is going to be more of an issue there than whether it's way too thick.
Yeah, and one way to get around that is on the initial, instead of trying to use a utensil to spread it out, especially when you're spinning like this, just put some paint in the middle, spin it, and let the spinning even out the paint because then you'll get a nice consistent area. Or you can put the paint on, do a you tilt it to kind of get it everywhere, and then spin it. That'll really flatten out the paint for you. Putting in too much paint, though, in this case, we've all done it. We've all done it a lot of times. If you've been painting, you've made this mistake. So what I do like about this painting that really jumped out at me is the translucent layers. I have always been a big fan of these translucent layers on pours like this, um, and anytime I can figure out how to get it and make it look nice, I really like that. I have a couple of videos that I've done where I intentionally try and do that. Um, just thin down the paint way, less color and a lot more pouring medium just to get this kind of look. But you may not like it, but one thing that I think is striking about this one, especially this section down here at the bottom, I really liked.
It's very cool. Looks like candy corn.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Absolutely. So keep up. I mean, again, all of us have this same problem that we always want it to be what we see in our mind, but it very rarely is. And one of the hardest things in an artist, in my opinion, is to accept what we got and understand what we can do better the next time and move on and don't beat ourselves up. If you don't like it, again, uh, there are so many times where I've had other people say, I really love that painting. It's a painting that I didn't really like. So it's hard for us as artists to look at our paintings that we may not like and still see beauty in it. And it's something we really have to look, all of us really have to learn. So next up, we have Derek McGain. He actually sent us 3 photos of the same picture, which I'll show here. And he is using glue and water, correct?
Yes.
With silicone, and then he's using craft paints. And just wanted some feedback. Sorry, that was the previous one. Wanted some feedback on this, and I will tell you, you got a fantastic result. This is an amazing pour, and my daughter would have stolen this uh, the second that it got varnished in my house. I don't know why all the purples and yellows or purples and pinks seem to go into her room, but I love the color combination. I love the cells. Um, you got some great result, especially this third one. This cell right here in the middle, I love. That has the white on the outside and the little funky edges. The reason you get that is just the I see that more in craft paint than with other paints. Usually because it's a little bit thinner, and it doesn't hold together as much. But I really love how this painting showed up, and I keep going forward and back. Just some suggestions: if you want bigger cells, you torch early and you wait before you tilt. If you want little cells, you tilt, you get everything ready, and then you torch. You can get big and little cells in either one of those, but generally, the more time you give to cells to form before you tilt, the bigger they're going to ultimately become. Um, in this case, I honestly love everything about this painting.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing. In a glue and water mixture, you torch it to bring up the cells, and when you torch makes a difference. So yeah, torching before you tilt, because then the tilting can help stretch out those cells, and also they can grow when the paint layer is thicker. When the paint layer is thinner, they don't open up as much. So whatever effect you're trying to achieve, you can use that knowledge to get a particular look. It's not a right or wrong, it's just what are you going for? But I love it.
And
I love
yeah,
those cells.
absolutely. And Derek, I'm going to give you some homework. I want to know exactly what colors you used in this, because this may be a palette that I want to do in the future.
Very cool. So these next two paintings come from Juliano Del Negro, and he watched a video by Tictus Art. I think it was called Golden Tiger or something like that. It was a straight pour video, and then he tried to reproduce it, and he was disappointed with his results and was wondering, why did mine not turn out like that video? And first of all, it is hard to reproduce somebody else's art, especially if you're not following it exactly. Looks like your canvases are much larger than the one used in the video. And so anytime like a little painting is going to look different, even if you use the exact same paints, layer them the exact same way, do the exact same technique, a little painting versus a big painting, it's going to look different. So I had a couple tips for you. Hopefully you can use this to make something more to your liking. But first of all, in the layering of the cup, I watched the Tictus Art video and I noticed their layers of gold were bigger than their layers of black. So in the cup, they had more gold than black. Black can overtake a pour. So if you put a little bit more gold and you have larger layers, it's going to come out with bigger bands of gold, which I think is what you were going for. Then the other thing is, as you pour it out, the height of your cup matters. Because if you're low down to the canvas, it can flow out slowly. If you're higher up, it'll form a smaller stream, smaller ribbons. So especially in that painting on the left, you've got thin ribbons, which are beautiful, and it looks like you have gold in there, but because you're pouring from up high and the gold layers are smaller, it's not showing up quite as boldly as you wanted it to.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. You can see how low they're pouring from here and how wide the band is when it actually hits the canvas. That tells me two things. One, that they're pouring slowly, and two, that the paint is on the thicker side. And I can tell the paint's on the thicker side regardless, just because of how much it bubbles up here. So maybe adding a little bit of thickness or a little less water or whatever you use to thin the paint down would help that. Also, the paint layers make a big difference. Like you say, with black just tends to take over. Depending on which black you used, could also determine how much the gold comes out from your painting. um, I love the work that Tictus does. A lot of they get a lot of beautiful colors, and I gotta say I've had the same hard time trying to replicate some of the pours that they've done also. So don't feel bad about that.
And the other thing too is choosing a color of gold. I don't know whether you're happy with the color of your gold because some gold paints are very kind of yellow and some are very orange. There's cooler golds and there's warmer golds. And in the Tictus video, it's a very warm gold, almost a coppery color. And in yours, it looks a little cooler. So I don't know if that was one of the things that you weren't happy with. But if it is, you could try using a different color of gold.
Absolutely. Also, thank you very much, international. I know a bunch of people have been international, but we got that. I don't know if you mentioned we got that in Italian, so hopefully he can get either understand us or get subtitles in Italian to receive that feedback. So we have Steve Dyer, and he was wanting to create Aurora Borealis. I can't blame you for that. I live here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we actually got to see it a couple of weeks ago. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And yeah, I would love to replicate that also. And what we did here is two dirty cut pours. The first was the sky, let it dry, and then created the bottom. And he's using Nick Pro paints, which are kind of a craft student level acrylic paint that you can get, I believe, on Amazon or online. I don't recall seeing that in the store. And his mix is um, glue, water, and Floetrol to get that consistency. So the first thing I'm going to say is honestly, I have never had good results with mixing Floetrol and glue. They just don't play well together. So I would use one or the other when you're doing your pour. The second thing, he wanted to get really that borealis look up at the top, which I can tell you is not easy to do. One thing I think you could do is to swipe one of those bright colors over the top of the black. Preferably, you're keeping track of what colors are dense and what colors are more heavy. Because if you swipe a dense paint over a lighter paint, the dense paint's going to fall through, and you'll only get little um, lacing on top. And I think lacing actually looks better for the Aurora Borealis. That's my personal opinion. Some people like the more broad colors out there, but that's one suggestion I've had to help the Aurora actually show better on the painting. And I know, Anna, we talked about this the last time we did these videos about your Aurora Borealis paintings, and you've got a lot of experience about that. What info would you give him to help bring that out more?
Yeah, I think he's actually trying to do the Aurora Australis, which is the southern lights, versus Borealis is the northern lights. So you and I have both seen the northern lights now, and it was really spectacular a few weeks ago. That was lots of fun. So I've done a few of these now. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't like the lacing in the Aurora because when I look at the sky, what I see is a nice smooth fade with absolutely no cells whatsoever. So if I'm going to make a realistic Aurora pour, what I want is not a lot of cells, just nice fade. So I've actually done a couple of what I would consider very successful Aurora pours, and I will link to those below or popping up or somewhere. Yeah, so for both of those, I did swipes. One of them I did like a big horizontal swipe, and that was just for like a big band of color across the sky. And for another one, I did smaller vertical stripes, like a ghost swipe. And that one is for a more kind of layered, textured look. So I think either of those would work well with your sky. And for that, I used Floetrol as my mixture. and Payne's gray as my background, so I had a nice dense background, and then the lighter colors could swipe up over it in order to not make the lacing. But like David said, if you want lacing, then swap that order and swipe something dense, high density over something low density.
Now, one thing also with the Aurora australis in your case instead of borealis, thanks for pointing that out, is you could actually just paint that on top. I don't know if you've ever seen a regular acrylic artist paint the Aurora borealis or the Aurora australis, let it the whole thing dry, get a nice fat flat brush, put a little bit of a paint, kind of dab the paint on to the canvas, and then use a dry brush to to swipe it up through the other paint, and you can actually get some pretty amazing kind of mixed media art that way, which is another choice if you're having trouble with the poor version getting those cells. You can look that up. There's so many videos on that. I can't tell you how many hours I've wasted watching people paint those night skies.
Yeah, and then you can use a fan brush to tap some stars into the sky. So that
It
can
looks like
really
he
help
did
it.
that here.
Oh yeah, I do see some. Okay, so
Yeah,
maybe they're
I
just
wasn't
not
sure if that
showing
was the
up
light
super
or not,
bright.
but yeah, I think it actually was. He does have some
Okay.
stars in the sky, which is awesome.
And the other thing that I was going to say was about your landscape. If you want to make a really clean, kind of defined horizon, you can put tape out over your sky, either in a flat line or kind of, in the shape of mountains or, something, so that as you're doing that pour, you can let the paint go wherever it wants to go, and then after it dries, you peel up the tape and you have a nice defined line. So if that's what you're looking for, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but if it is, that's one way to get it.
Yeah. Last but not least, now that you mentioned that with the Earth, um, right now you have like 60% Earth and 30% or 40% sky. If you're really trying to paint the aurora borealis, I'd do like 10%, 20% Earth and 80, 70% sky. And this only happens when it's dark. So the other problem is if you have nice bright colors in the top, but then you have nice bright colors in the land, your eye doesn't know what to look at. So you might darken the land because again, generally you're going to see this at night and it's going to be dark anyways, and it'll just automatically make your eyes pop up to the beautiful colors of the aurora in the sky.
Great advice. Good luck, Steve. I hope you get something that you like. It's a really it's a really hard thing to get right. I have tried many times this year.
And if I do say so myself, you've been very successful, but it took a couple tries, and it takes
It
all of us a
did.
couple tries.
It sure did.
All right. Thank you, Anna, for setting this up. And thank you, everyone, for submitting your paintings for us to review. We really do love being able to see artwork, answer questions, try and figure out what people are trying to do, where they're having struggles. We hope that this has been helpful. Um, Thanks again, Anna, for coming on to my channel.
Absolutely.
We have even more feedback from this session on Anna's channel at the video on the screen now.